Hello and welcome to the TechBytes audiocast. My name's Tim and I'm from the TechBytes blogazine, and with me is Dr. Roy Shestowitz from the TechBytes website.
It's Friday night and I'm gonna get sauce. I fought the troll and the troll lost. I fought the troll and the troll lost. He tried to boss me and was outbossed. I fought the troll and the troll lost. I fought the troll and the troll lost. Underneath his creeper bridge, hoping goats will cross. Quoting Ashcroft and Tom Ridge, I fought.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of the TechBytes audiocast for Friday, December the 3rd. Welcome everyone. It's a very cold UK with temperatures reaching minus 20 in some areas, and certainly where I am it's got up to -9 I believe at some point. So it's a very cold UK, and welcome to everybody that's downloaded us. Today we're going to be looking at the main news that's hit the papers and hit the internet, the Wikileaks story. We've also got a few tidbits of short pieces of news from around the web. And first of all, for a change today, instead of going to Roy, we're going to go over to Gordon, who's going to start us off with a few topics, and then we'll see where that progresses from there. So over to you, Gordon.
Hi. Right, well, the first story is, it's actually quite a detailed piece, and I would encourage you to go and read it and break it down yourself. It's basically a story about how broken is video game journalism. It's an analysis of 3 gaming sites, and they're looking at things like the PR departments and basically the incestuous relationship between the game developers, the game publishers, the game creators, the retailers who sell them, and the magazines. Where they give, for example, exclusive access to a game and on condition that the game doesn't get, say, less than 95% in the ratings. So it's like buying the endorsement of the supposedly independent review, and invariably the one person that is quoted as someone who works for that PR company or for that developer.
I don't think it's a gaming issue, actually. If you don't mind interrupting, I think it's a general issue, and we could talk about this in terms of a general problem of reviews and not just game reviews.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing. This was actually specifically about game journalism, but it does apply to everything. The way that big business essentially, and the games industry, they have so much of everything tied up. That you essentially have to play the game. If you're going to be mainstream, you have to play the game, so to speak. They fund the advertisements for the site, they send the traffic to the site, and in return they expect good reviews. And we've found out before, when game developers don't get really high marks, they go absolutely mental. On Twitter, they accuse the journalists of being biased and whatever, and for daring to point out that a game is flawed, so that you just don't understand it, and they just refuse to accept that something they've worked so hard on is so bad, and they don't accept it. So basically, this site breaks down a lot of different elements of it, like how many of them as well just copy press releases and slightly reword them and put them out as a review, you know.
In some cases, when you receive a negative review, what you do is you try to generate some organic reviews and all kinds of positive fluff to clog up the internet or to clog up the masses of reviews. And one of the things, actually, in case of hardware reviews, that's a tricky one, because the companies actually don't send you a copy of a piece of software. They send you a piece of equipment, which is worth money, and you can put on eBay at the end. I think that's one of the issues I sometimes have in mind when I look at hardware reviews from Phoronix, but this is very typical for all the review sites, and also I wrote earlier this week, I did a whole bunch of posts about complaining about PR agencies trying to persuade the journalists and try to give them incentives to write positive things about a specific company that were hired to basically to shield for, and that's just the way it works. It's the estimation of the value of this industry is over $1 trillion per year, only in the United States. Over $1 trillion per year, and that's something like 20% of the whole, spendings or budgets for everything in a year, just marketing.
I seem to have a recollection, probably in about the last year, I think it was, of a sort of scandal with Atari and Alone in the Dark 4, where there was a bad review about it and there was some sort of fiasco around that. I don't know if either of you two would jump in and say, yeah, I remember that story, but it just rang a few bells when Gordon was saying about the expecting favourable reviews for sending their products and driving advertising. I'm sure there was something about an Atari game. I could be wrong.
Well, I don't know about an Atari one. I don't know about Alone in the Dark, but there was one game where the developer or the press agent basically would be hounding the editors and the journalists to insist on actually rewording a supposedly independent review and saying, look, we'll reword it. I don't want you to include this sentence here and don't include that, but say this and include this. Like, hang on a minute, who's writing the review here?
Yeah.
And when the reporter or the journalist doesn't do it, they then go ballistic and say, right, okay, I'm not dealing with you. I'm going to your boss. I'm going above your head to ensure that it gets printed out. Or if they publish it, they demand an immediate retraction, an apology, and all that, just for giving their opinion.
Did you hear about a very famous case? Was a review written about an Xbox 360 game, I think a Microsoft game, and only when you looked closer, and this was a very famous example, you found out one of the people who wrote the reviews was an employee of Microsoft. So.
Well, we've said before, Roy, it seems that the only people that I discover that have been celebrating Microsoft products usually turn out to be Microsoft employees, in my experience.
They have a disclosure somewhere.
It's just very small, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so they can have an excuse.
I mean, what I would say, I don't recall whether that game was Atari. I don't recall whether it was Alone in the Dark. I was hoping for some prompting. But if I could just say very quickly, although this practice is allegedly going on and we can't be sure. Recently on the Linux Outlaws, Fab received a dongle, I believe it was. He was sent it through the post to review, and to his credit, he was blatantly honest when he said he couldn't get it to work. So I think it does show the honesty of some people as well. When you do read a review that is very critical of a product that's being sent, I'm sure it was Fab. I haven't listened to the Linux Outlaws recently, but I'm sure it was in the last month or so. And certainly that's why Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think what doesn't help, I mean, I've not been a gamer for a while. When I was a gamer, it was really before I got my computer, so the reviews and things I saw was all in print magazines. And what doesn't really help is, like, one publisher runs about 6 or 7 of the magazines that you might be reading. They've all got different brands, but it's one publisher. So they can easily sort of influence and spread that influence over those magazines, and you're not even aware of it unless you look closely who publishes it at the back. But the other side to that, the other side to that is gamers, I suppose, like any other group, any other demographic, they kind of get to know that. I mean, for example, when I was into video games like years and years ago, magazines like Computer and Video Games were a complete waste of time because of the way they reviewed and the high ratings they always gave to even the worst games. So gamers tend to get an idea if it's reviewed in this magazine and it gets a good review, they're pretty honest, so it's going to be pretty good. But if it's reviewed in this one, everything gets a good review, so just forget it. So gamers tend to be a little bit more savvy in where they get the information from.
I think it might. I mean, this is a very, very general statement, but it just shows the worth of the blogger reviewer, for want of a better name for them, because I've certainly have never received any gifts of review gifts from companies wanting me to look at their products. I've received a couple of offers, but I've obviously never taken those up. And I think the general blogging populace is the same. We review things that we actually physically go out and buy, and I think a review has there could be two different types of review. I think if I was looking at a game that I got for free, because it was through the post and they want me to look at it, I would review it very differently than if I had to go and pay £40 of my hard-earned cash. And you could argue that a review that's based upon a freebie through the post is probably not as balanced as one where somebody's physically got to go out and spend their own money on it, because obviously that's what the majority of people are doing when they're